four-year college, going to a four-year college is definitely a very popular choice for most of our students. Last 2 weeks ago, we did a junior workshop on UC and Cal State CSU admissions. We got like 50 kids join the workshop. So we know, we have a lot of students with goals of going to a four-year college, but still we have many other different options. Students can go to community college to get a associate degree, or they can transfer later into a four-year college. They can also go to trade school or get go to a certificate programs. And in addition to those, students can go to military or enter workforce, or if a student feels, oh, I'm still not that ready for college, they can take a gap year. That's the time when they can either travel or do some more like community service, or find a part-time job to find out who they are and what they want. So for many freshmen and sophomores, they probably feel, oh, it's too early for me to think about that. I will probably start thinking about what I want to do in senior year. But still, actually for ninth graders and 10th graders, there are a lot of things you can do which will help you have an early start. For example, you can start thinking about what do you like to do outside of the classroom. And you can think about your strengths and weaknesses. It includes your academic strengths and also non-academic strengths like hobbies, talents, such as sports, music, art. And you can start thinking about potential careers. Recently, I got a lot of applications, the work permit applications from even 9th and 10th graders. They're trying to find a job after school or during the summer. So that's actually a great way to help students find out what they want to do in the future, what they like to do in the future. And also for freshmen, sophomore, you can start attending college visits. This usually will give students a great motivation to prepare for college in the future. And finally, the 10th graders, they're going to take PSAT in 10th grade. It's not gonna affect their college application at all, but I would say it's a very great way to find out where they are and how much prep they probably need in the future to get like a higher or competitive score on the real test. Okay. And for juniors, I'll let Huang take over.
Yeah, and like Ms. Els mentioned, there's a lot that goes into college preparation. The PSAT is always a point of reference. Students are able to take it in 10th grade. Like was mentioned, we actually just had it at Brenham last month. The PSAT, we typically see that students take that typically in 11th grade, since that's the one that counts for the National Merit Scholarship. And typically that's taken in October during a school day. Students are able to do that. We definitely, junior year is that year that we very much push students to start attending, if they haven't already, college fairs, to really start researching schools. And what I always tell students is researching the schools is you can have 20, 30 schools on a list. It's better to have a lot, and then so that way we can condense it later on to have a good list of schools for the students. And then junior spring going into summer, there will be different junior workshops that we host at Brenham. They can attend in-person or virtual college tours. Some schools seem to be kind of getting back on track with in-person tours. Others are still offering kind of a better version, or kind of a virtual college tour as well. It is super, super important that before we go to summer break between junior and senior year, that students start identifying who the teacher recommenders are going to be. And now that's typically only if they're planning to or are going to apply to private schools. and they're going to need letters of recommendation. We see that every year. This is actually my first year at Brenham as a school counselor. But we don't want students to wait until August or September to start like identifying recommenders, because every year it happens that the same group of teachers, a lot of times they get just a million requests for letters of recommendation. So we want to get ahead of that. We want to be proactive and do that before the summer break. And then again, kind of going back to the tentative college list, it can be long in the fall of junior year, 10th grade, but really to start condensing that as we go into summer and then fall of the senior year. And then the essays is a big part of that too. It's really, I mean, if they're applying to Common App schools or they're applying to the UCs and doing the personal insight questions, the PIQs, to really start brainstorming even ideas or bullet points or just putting things on a Word document so that when the time comes senior year, they're better prepared. And then senior year, I mean, it happens fast. The summer is definitely making sure that we review deadlines and requirements for different schools. Some private schools, especially, I mean, it's very, very few. I can only think of 2 right now that have an October 15th deadline. So that's during senior year, it's very fast. Typically we see a lot of November 1st and November 30th typically is the big deadline for UC and CSU. But especially those private schools, they're just going to vary in terms of deadlines. So making sure that we get way ahead of that too, so we don't miss something. The student doesn't miss something in terms of applying and submitting an application. And at this point to really start kind of finalizing a college list and then continuing to work on those essays as well. And then senior year, I mean, like I mentioned, it happens fast. We got to have those essays pretty finalized. You know, I mean, my recommendation is always, you know, to have it pretty ready by August. We as counselors meet with every single senior, all students, but in terms of seniors, we meet with them very early. School typically starts mid-August and we're meeting with students. I think this year we started meeting with students right at the start of September. Or first week of September. Every student is met with, every student will have that discussion in terms of post-secondary plans. And that's where we go over making sure that they know deadlines, making sure that they have teachers for letters of rec if they're going to need those. If they're applying to private schools and use Common App, we typically have to have that match with the student database called Naviance. The students have access to. That's where our documents for senior year and those applying to private schools, that's where we submit their transcripts, letters of recommendation, and any other document that we have to submit typically goes through Naviance. And really to start working on applications, the UC opens pretty soon. They typically open August 1st. I don't know if that's going to be the case going into next year. I think I've heard that they're going to change that, but typically it's open pretty early for them to start working on it. And then the CSU filing period is between October to November 30th. That tends to be sort of a big deadline for students. And then financial aid in the California DREAM Act. So FAFSA and California DREAM Act priority deadline is March 2nd of every year. And that's something that we always encourage students to submit a financial aid application. Do not disqualify yourself immediately because you think you're not going to get any sort of financial aid. It doesn't hurt to go ahead and submit an application. And that's something that I believe Steve's going to kind of hint a little bit or touch upon during his presentation. And I see a question, what are FAFSA and CADA? Those are financial aid applications. FAFSA is a federal application for student aid, and the CADA or CADA is the California DREAM Act application. That's FAFSA is federal, and then CADA, the California DREAM Act, is a California only application because it's not a federal program. But we always tell students to submit it and let the schools go ahead and decide on financial aid packages. So like I said, there's a lot of really condensed information, at least for this webinar. We will continue having our general counseling parent nights that go much more in depth in terms of these topics. Go ahead and feel free to put your questions on the Q&A feature. At this moment, we're going to go ahead and stop share and allow Steve to go ahead and take over with financial literacy in terms of prepping for college expenses.
Thanks, Juan. I think I need to have permission to share co-host or something.
Go ahead and try now.
Alrighty. Oh, there we go. Took a while. You see that okay?
All good.
Okay, good. Okay, all right. Well, thanks everybody for making time to attend tonight's program. And thank you to Juan and Chen for making it available. I'll tell you that I speak to parents at a lot of high schools over here in the Santa Cruz Monterey area. And not all of the high schools go out of their way to provide this type of information to their parents. So kudos to Juan and Chen for wanting to make sure that you guys have a little bit of information to help you prepare. So my objective tonight, I'm just going to talk for about 30 or 40 minutes and then hopefully answer your questions. My primary objective tonight is to really convince you parents that planning ahead is really important if you want to increase the odds of reducing college costs. As Juan mentioned, I've been helping parents since about 2004. That's when my own kids were in high school, helping parents to make college more affordable. And in that almost 20-year time, I can tell you that what I have experienced and what I have seen is that the parents who take the time, try to learn what they can, as much as they can about how this process works, oftentimes are able to reduce college costs by taking advantage of opportunities, eliminating mistakes. Their kids often end up paying less for college. So we'll just go ahead and jump right into it. And as Juan mentioned, please put your questions in the chat. So parents, many parents are obviously concerned, not as prepared perhaps as you'd like to be. Some parents feel guilty about not having saved enough or for not earning enough. And many are concerned that they'll disappoint their children, meaning that they may not be able to afford the schools that their kids want. These are very common emotions. This process is very emotional. It really does help if you prepare. And of course, many parents are just not sure where to begin. I started doing college planning in 2004. My own kids were in high school. I was at that point where you are now. I really didn't know a lot about college financial aid and how the process worked. I learned it then, and I've been helping people since. So the college process today is definitely not the same as it was when you went to college. It's very emotional. There's a lot of confusion. It is a consumer decision. You're about to spend a lot of money on college, and there really isn't any other consumer decision that I can think of that has more emotion involved, and it's as confusing. There definitely is a lack of clarity. Most parents are not sure how the process works, and that is not to your advantage. We as parents feel like we have, and in many cases we do have, very little control. The colleges have a lot of control, but if you're proactive, if you start early, try to plan ahead, you can gain back some of that control. And this is definitely an unpredictable process. Your kids will apply to schools when they're seniors. For the most part, they will hear where they're accepted and how much financial aid they're going to be offered in the spring. Right now, the current year seniors are receiving their acceptances and their financial aid awards. So it is a somewhat long and tedious process, but again, the more time you put in, the more you plan ahead, the better off you'll be. So, want to pay less for college. As I've said, really important to plan ahead, take action. Gary Player, if you're a golfer, you probably know that name. He's probably well into his 80s right now. He's South African. He was one of the best golfers in the world in probably the 60s and 70s. He said, the more I practice, the luckier I get. When it comes to college planning, the more you learn, the more you practice, it's not that you're going to get luckier, but you will increase the odds of a better outcome. So again, especially if you have 9th graders and 10th graders, in other words, you have a few more years to work with, I encourage you to save as much as you can. Sometimes you hear said that you shouldn't bother saving because the more you save, the more it's going to hurt you when it comes to your child being awarded financial aid. For the most part, that is not true. You should not listen to that type of a comment. Now, does financial aid, is it dependent upon how much you save? Yes, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. So saving does have an impact, but typically it is not a severe impact, and it's to your advantage in almost all cases to save as much as you can. But note what I have in the parentheses: be mindful of financial aid limits. So many students receive free money from the state of California, from the federal government. These are grants. They're free. You don't have to repay them. When I say be mindful of the limits for the Cal Grant, if your family, depending on the size of your family, if the family income and assets are within certain limits, your children will qualify for a Cal Grant. Now, I'm not going to go into all of the details tonight on what those limits are. As Juan mentioned, we do a more detailed presentation in the fall. This is meant as more of an overview and an introduction. So I'm happy to talk to you more about that privately if you have questions. Main point is, if you can save more, it's almost always to your advantage to do so. Very important that you determine what you can afford to pay. Talk to your kids about that. Also very important, especially for the juniors. If there are 11th grade parents listening in, I will go into a certain amount of detail tonight, and that's primarily for the benefit of the junior parents, because this fall is application time, it's financial aid time, and I want you to, for the junior parents especially, to be a little bit more knowledgeable about what's coming up. So when I say know your child's student aid index, or SAI, this used to be called expected family contribution, or EFC. I'm going to talk to you more about that in just a minute, but basically it's calculating what you are going to be expected to pay for your child's year-by-year college education. So let's talk about each of these in a little bit more detail. And juniors, 11th graders, Juan mentioned that we're approaching the time when you're going to start thinking seriously about colleges. Really important to choose your colleges wisely. Has a huge bearing on the cost. And remember, my comments to you tonight are coming to you from the financial side, not the academic side. I'm not an educational consultant. I'm a financial planner and a CPA. So let's talk about college costs. Let's make sure you understand what kind of numbers we're talking about here. So these are sticker prices. In other words, retail. UCs, UCLA, Berkeley, Davis, etc. Pardon me. Total cost for 1 year, $35,000 to $42,000. Berkeley is the most expensive at $42,000. That's a lot of money. 40 grand a year times 4 years for UC. CSUs, San Jose State, Long Beach, Chico, Fresno, etc. 22 to 32. Most expensive one, $32,000, San Francisco State, because of the housing. Again, sticker prices, out-of-state flagship colleges and universities, $50,000 and more. University of Oregon, Washington, Colorado, Michigan. These are examples of out-of-state flagship colleges. Now, this is critical. You need to understand, especially the juniors, you need to understand that state colleges, their mission is to support in-state students, not give money to out-of-state students. So if you're thinking about, and a lot of kids from California apply to those schools, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, not so much Michigan, but especially Oregon and Washington. You need to understand the vast majority of California students who apply to those schools pay between $50,000 and $60,000 a year. Many parents and students think it's probably going to cost the same as a UC. It will not. It's going to be quite a bit more expensive. It's the same, by the way, if an international or an out-of-state student attends a UC, University of California. They're paying also $50,000 to $60,000. So be very careful, be aware of that. And many privates are now over 80,000, over 85,000 even. But very important, it's easy to avoid paying full price if you plan ahead and you choose your colleges wisely. So if it's so expensive, why don't most parents plan ahead? There's several reasons that I think that are relevant. Most of us, I say us, we don't realize that it can make a huge difference to plan ahead. We're all very busy. We just don't have time to take on more projects. Many of us assume that our children will receive big scholarships and we don't have to plan ahead. Well, some of your kids, I'm sure, will receive big scholarships, but not all. And it's very disappointing sometimes when they don't. So planning ahead is important, and you should not fail to plan ahead, assuming that your kid's going to get big scholarships. And lastly, it is confusing. There's an awful lot to focus on, and we just don't know where to begin. So, college cost conversation. This is the elephant in the room. Many families, I don't know about most, but many families do not talk about college costs early enough. Now, this quote, apply wherever you want, we'll worry about the money later. Many parents say these words to their kids in the summer and the fall, coming up, summer and fall of senior year, when the applications are when the kids are looking at the schools, trying to figure out which schools are going to apply to, make their applications. From my point of view, and from what I've seen over the past, well, since 2004, if you have an attitude like this, apply wherever you want, we'll worry about the money later, these are often the families who end up borrowing an excessive amount of money. Because worrying about it later, sometimes parents can put you in a real jam. You either have to say no to your kid, that they can't go to a particular school because you can't afford it, or you either have to spend a lot of your own money, maybe take from your retirement, or borrow excessively. And there's as most of you no doubt know, there's a significant student loan crisis in this country, and a lot of the debt is owned by parents because they don't set limits, expectations, and they don't want to say no, so they end up borrowing a ton of money. So my suggestion to you is be very careful with how you approach the college cost conversation. My suggestion to you is to have the money talk if you're concerned about college costs. Now, if you're not concerned and you're able and willing to pay whatever it takes, then that's fine. I'm referring to the folks who are concerned about college costs, and my advice is have the money talk. When should you do that? Well, certainly by spring, this time of the year for juniors, spring and summer of the junior year. As the kids are looking at colleges, you want to determine, parents, what you can afford to pay. Is that $20,000 a year, $40,000 a year? What is that amount of money? And that is from your savings, from your income, from family members, maybe grandparents, from all sources. And then how much are you willing to borrow? You add that all up, that's your budget. My advice to you is determine what that is. If you don't know how, if you're not sure how to do that, I can help you, but determine what your budget is. Discuss it with your kids. Be honest with yourself and with your kids. Set expectations. This is really important. These conversations, if you have them now with your junior, I mean, you can start casually talking about it with a sophomore, but if you haven't already, definitely by junior. These conversations, they're not adversarial, they're not contentious. You're just having a conversation to let your kids know that you're going to do whatever you can to help them attend the schools that they want, but that they need to understand that money is limited and your budget is this. So they can apply to more expensive schools, but they need to understand that unless they get a financial aid award that brings the cost down to within your budget, they may not be able to go. It's important that your kids understand that, they know where you're coming from, and they won't be surprised kind of out of the dark if they get accepted, and then all of a sudden, now you're going to tell them no. And again, focus on net price, not sticker price. Now, this is especially for the juniors, and let me go through this quickly. It's a little after 7, so got a few more slides to go, so let me kind of move through this. So again, particularly for the juniors, but it is helpful for the younger students to at least know what's coming. So how is financial aid calculated? Now, when I say financial aid, I'm talking about need-based aid. There is need-based aid and there's merit aid. Need-based aid is awarded to the students whose family's income and assets qualify them for help. Merit aid is based on merit, some positive attributes that the student brings to the school. So again, look at this formula. I'm not going to spend a lot of time, so write this down, listen to the recording again, but the formula that you have in front of you there that Einstein is working on, this is the formula that determines whether or not a child will be offered need-based financial aid. So parents, this is going to be part of your homework, is to calculate your EFC right here, EFC, or Student Aid Index. What does this formula mean? Cost of attendance, COA, cost of attendance. What does that mean? Berkeley, 42,000. San Francisco State, 32,000. Expensive private college, 85,000. That's cost of attendance. Minus expected family contribution or Student Aid Index. You subtract that from the cost. If this is a positive number, the student qualifies for need-based aid. So we know what this is. This is the important number right here. What is your child's EFC or Student Aid Index? Where does that come from? It comes from parent income and parent assets, student income and student assets. Now, Juan mentioned the FAFSA. That is a financial aid form that is typically filled out in the fall by seniors. When you fill out the FAFSA, they ask you for income, assets, parents, and students. They put it all together, and that determines the child's expected family contribution or Student Aid Index. So my advice to you, especially if you have a junior, and if you're curious, sophomore, you can do it too. Go to one of these calculators. They're listed at the top, Big Future EFC Calculator, Federal Student Aid Estimator. And by the way, I will provide these slides to Juan after tonight's program. And I'm guessing he'll make them available to you. These are clickable links. I would suggest to you parents that you calculate your students' expected family contribution by going to one of these two calculators. Pardon me. Now, importantly, they look at the income from your tax return 2 years prior to graduation. So juniors are going to graduate in 2024. They will look at your tax return from 2022. Now 2022 is done. There isn't a whole lot you can do to change 2022's tax return. However, sophomore parents, your kid will be graduating in 2025. What tax return will they be looking at initially? 2023, this year. So if you calculate your expected family contribution, if you have a sophomore, you calculate your expected family contribution, it looks like your child will qualify for need-based aid based on this formula. It might be to your advantage to try to keep that EFC as low as possible. How do you do that? Well, again, if you have a sophomore, they're looking at 2023 tax return, you can try to keep your income in 2023 as low as possible. Don't take unnecessary income. Don't sell appreciated stock. Don't withdraw from retirement plans. Don't take again, remember, it's based on income and assets. So what else can you do possibly to control your EFC? Keep an eye on the assets to make sure that, as I said earlier, you don't exceed the Cal Grant limit. And again, there's more to it. I'm introducing you to the concepts. The main point is calculate your expected family contribution, determine whether or not your children will qualify for need-based aid. Now, keep in mind, sometimes they may qualify for need-based aid at a public, but not at a private. And I think the next slide will talk about that. Last thing here, see this picture in the lower right, this mom? This is the look on her face is the look that will be on many of your faces when you see what your child's expected family contribution is. I'm forewarning you, it will quite likely be higher than you expect, higher than you think should be reasonable. So don't be surprised. So let me give you an example of why you need to focus on net cost and not sticker price. Public college, private college. Cost of attendance. Remember, we talked about every college has a cost of attendance. UCs are about $40,000. Expensive privates are about $85,000. All right, cost of attendance minus expected family contribution is financial need potential. So this family's EFC, expected family contribution, is about $30,000. Cost of attendance minus EFC qualifies for need-based aid. At a public, it's quite possible that this student would be offered no free money, but rather would be offered loans. So what is the net cost at a public for this family? Probably around 40 grand. But what if this student has good GPA, good test scores, good extracurriculars, good essays, basically aspires to attend one of these expensive privates? EFC 30,000. Now note the asterisk. I'm ignoring home equity. Many privates include some home equity. I'm ignoring it for this purpose. Cost of attendance minus EFC. This student qualifies now for not $10,000 of financial aid, $55,000 of financial aid. If this particular school provides 80% of need, 85% of 55,000, this student will pay $41,000 to attend this expensive school. It's about the same as a UC. Every year, students with financial profiles that look like this attend expensive colleges because they either receive a lot of need-based aid or, as I say down below, merit aid can produce the same result. The key is to choose your colleges wisely. But when you hear that many students can attend expensive schools for about the same price, this is what's going on, either need-based aid or merit aid. So, again, especially for juniors, during the application process this fall and leading up to it, these are some strategies that you absolutely can use to reduce college costs. And some of these strategies are the types of efforts that Juan and Chen will be talking to you about. Choose colleges that fit. Fit means a lot of things: academic, social, geographic, financial. Choose colleges that fit. If you choose colleges that fit, it's less likely that you'll transfer out. A very high, I think like 30% of students transfer at least once during their career. That's a pretty high number. So choose colleges that fit. Research colleges that tend to be more generous. This is all public information. You just need to know where to look. It's part of why I say the parents who do their homework, do their research, find these websites, plan ahead, they are the ones who are more successful. It's not that hard to research colleges that tend to be more generous. Very important. When your children are identifying colleges to which they want to apply, it's very helpful if you're concerned not only about admission, but about financial aid, especially merit aid, to look at colleges that are not highly selective or impacted. Many of us are blinded by college rankings, and we are looking at colleges that are high in the rankings. They are highly selective, and it's very hard to get in. These colleges are very generous with need-based aid, but not at all generous in many cases with merit aid. If you want to increase the odds of getting in and the odds of getting a nice financial aid award, my suggestion is look beyond the highly selective schools. Look at the schools that they tend to be smaller, unranked, and often out of state. Now, is this right for everyone? No. But if these types of schools are the type that fall within the parameters that you and your children have set for college, these are the colleges that are more apt to be affordable. In the fall, when applications come, if a requirement is optional, submit it if possible. The obvious one that comes to mind is the SAT or the ACT. Many colleges aren't accepting them anymore. Some colleges, they're optional. If you think they're optional, that optional means it doesn't matter whether you turn them in or not, it won't affect your percent or chance of admission. That is not correct. If a college is test optional, I strongly suggest that you discuss this with Juan or Chen. But these colleges if you look at the acceptance rate at these colleges, comparing students who submit test scores and those who don't submit test scores, the percentage of students admitted is higher from those who submit test scores. So if it's optional, submit it if possible. Very important. If your student applies to colleges where they are in the top 10, 15, 20%, 25% of the applicant pool, the odds of admission are much greater. The odds of receiving merit aid are much greater. Now, keep in mind, and again, I go into more detail in the program that we're going to do in the fall. We've been talking about need-based aid and merit aid. And when you're researching colleges that tend to be more generous, it's really important to know what your EFC is, because if your expected family contribution is very high, if you have a very high income or a lot of assets, you're going to have a very high EFC or student aid index. If that's the case, because many families have a EFC of $100,000 or more, if that's the case, remember the formula: cost of attendance minus expected family contribution is need-based aid. If your expected family contribution is $100,000 or more, you need to understand that your child is not going to be offered need-based aid at any college or university. No need-based aid. If you're concerned about college costs, and if your child is applying to private colleges and universities, you need to focus on colleges that offer merit aid. Merit aid. If you don't, you're going to be unpleasantly surprised. Demonstrated interest is just what it sounds like. Many colleges want to know how interested, how motivated is your child to attend our college. One way many colleges judge the level of interest is by looking at what your child has done to demonstrate interest. Have they visited the college? Have they visited the college's website? Are they on the college's emailing list? Do they open the emails that get sent to them? What pages on the website have they visited? As no doubt many of you know, today the sophistication of the technology is such that colleges can tell a lot by looking at your browsing history, right? Have you visited? What have you done? So demonstrated interest is important to many colleges. If it's important to the colleges that are on your child's list, don't ignore this and try to make sure that your child is taking steps to show the college that they are interested. Now, this is really for all grades, and Juan and Chen alluded to this. I think Chen said that the students should really start thinking about what they're interested in. Certainly, all of our students have extracurricular activities, whether it's sports or volunteering or part-time jobs. The key to remember for colleges is that they're not looking for quantity of extracurricular activities. In other words, they're not looking for kids who are a little bit involved in 5 or 10 different activities. Ideally, what they're looking for, especially the privates, is kids who are passionate about 1 or 2 things, and they're focused on those areas of passion, and they behave in a way that they use that passion to influence others. Are they a leader? Do they volunteer? What is their passion? What is their interest? Is it art? Is it music? What are they doing with that outside of the classroom or outside of just personal enjoyment? So it's all about commitment, extracurricular commitments, emphasizing quality, not quantity. And as Juan pointed out, especially for the juniors now, it's really important that your children use this coming summer wisely. Not just relax all summer, but obviously they need to relax and recharge. But summer is a great time to get a jump on your college planning for the fall. Really working hard on the college list, working on the college personal statements, the essays. Really important and will really help in the come fall. Fall is very busy for the seniors. If you can get a lot of this work done during the summer, it will really ease a bit of the strain in the fall. So parents, these are your next steps, and it's a bit of a review of what we talked about. Calculate your expected family contribution. Discuss your budget with your kids. Review the list as your children are looking at colleges that they're thinking about making application. My advice to you is review the lists, see if you can determine, do they award need-based aid? Do they award merit aid? Will we qualify for need-based aid? Do some calculations. You can do your own Excel spreadsheet. Try to determine if they're affordable. If you're fairly certain that a college is not going to be affordable, then you need to have that conversation with your child. Now, again, what type of college would not be affordable? Let me remind you of the example I gave you earlier. Let's say that your EFC is 100,000. Will this child qualify for need-based aid at any school? 85,000 minus 100,000. No need-based aid. Now, there are many elite colleges that only award need-based aid. They only award need-based aid. They do not award merit aid. What are some examples of those colleges? All of the Ivies, Stanford, the elite colleges, the highly selective colleges, typically they award only need-based aid. If you have a very high EFC, your child is not going to get need-based aid at that college. They don't award merit aid. So if your child is a high achiever, really wants to go to an Ivy, applies to Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Brown, Dartmouth, pick your Ivy, with a very high EFC, they don't award merit aid. You're going to pay full price. That's what I'm talking about. If you are not prepared to pay full price, keep an eye on the colleges to which your child is thinking about applying. Because otherwise you are going to be in for a surprise come spring that's very predictable. So you need to look ahead. On my website, and remember my website is, my company and my website is Tuition Solutions Now. There's a resource page with some recommended reading. I would encourage you to take a look at the books, maybe check out some of the other resources. Now, there are private scholarships. What time we got here? Oh, 7:25, I got to wrap up. There are private scholarships. Private scholarships are available for 9th graders, 10th graders, 11th graders, 12th graders. So I don't have time to get into it tonight, but you can ask me after the meeting. I'd be happy to point you some resources on private scholarships. I have an ebook on my website, 11 Steps to Affording Your Child's College Costs. It's free. It's about 7 or 8 pages. I encourage you to download the ebook. You'll be on my mailing list for upcoming webinars. And remember, hoping for the best is not a plan. Everyone who attends a session like this, I've done this since 2004. I still do it. I'm happy to do it. I offer a complimentary session, whether you have a 9th grader, 10th grader, 11th grader, or 12th grader. If you want to get on my calendar for 30 or 45 minutes, ask me any questions you want about your planning. If I can answer, I'll certainly try, and I'll give you some other resources. But I encourage you to sign up for a complimentary session. How do you do that? Just visit my website, which is right here, Tuition Solutions Now, and send me a message that you want that complimentary visit. And you can also sign up again to download that ebook at that point. So with that, I know that was a lot in a short period of time. But again, it's being recorded. You'll have the slides. You can listen to it again. And I encourage you, when you see Juan's announcement in the fall that we're going to do a college financial aid webinar, tune in, because it's a little bit of what we covered tonight, but in in quite a bit more detail. So with that, I'm going to stop and see if there's any questions, Juan and Chen.
Yeah, so let's, we have another 5 or so minutes for parents to chime in on the Q&A, any questions that you might have.
And I'm happy to stay a little longer if you are, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, and then I just had I made 3 notes for myself to just kind of close it out as parents, type in any questions that they might have. In the more extended version of this meeting with Steve, I'm actually thinking it probably would be a good idea to also then re-include juniors in that meeting, because the last time we hosted it, you talked about flagship colleges, and my comment then was every year it feels like I have the same college lists from students. It's always the big name schools, and then you also talked about sort of like moving also and including smaller private schools that tend to be very generous with merit-based scholarships. So I'm sure you'll touch upon that next time we do this webinar. I think that was a really good point last time. It's kind of also moving away. I get, as a counselor, it's always the big name schools that I see every single year, but that only creates so much more competition within students. Parent involvement, I thought, was super key, that you mentioned in college selection. Parents, as a counselor, I always very much encourage you to be part of your own students' determination of what colleges they end up applying to. Every year I find that sometimes it's sort of like a surprise that, either at the number of schools that students are applying to that maybe parents didn't quite know about, and then also just generally what type of schools they're applying to. So having that conversation, like Steve mentioned, is super, super important as well. And then one last thing, West Valley College is hosting a college fair next Tuesday. Let me look at what time that is. It's going to be from 6 to 8 p.m. at West Valley. It's put on by an organization called WACC, the Western Association of College Admissions Counseling. They will have over 100 colleges present or be available for tabling at West Valley. WACC is an amazing organization, and they put on very good programming for college admissions. So I definitely encourage you, parents and students as well, to attend the college fair. It looks like right now they have just over 100 colleges that will be available, and we'll make sure to also send that out, the flyer out if it hasn't already. I think it has been by the district, with that information. So again, next Tuesday, 6 to 8 at West Valley College. And then let's see.
I see there's a few questions in the Q&A there, Juan. Should I take them?
Yeah, go right ahead.
So first one is, how do you find out if your student is the top percentage of the applicant pool? Again, this is all public information. So what I'm talking about there is, and Juan can probably add as well, but what I'm talking about is a GPA and test score. If your child is looking at a particular college, you can look at the statistics for any given college. It'll tell you what is the average GPA of the applicants in a given, say for last year, or what is the average test score, and then you can compare your child's numbers against what you see as the averages. So it's pretty straightforward to be able to determine whether your child is in the upper portion of the applicant pool or the lower portion. It's based on historical data. How can I know which college offers which financial aid? Again, it's all public information. You just have to, and on my website, on the resource page, I do list several websites that would answer the questions that you're asking about which colleges offer financial aid. So it's just a matter of finding the websites that provide the information, because it is readily available. Resources for private scholarships. There are a number of relatively free resources online for private scholarships. I'm thinking of websites that help you find private scholarships. So if you're concerned about that, if you do schedule some time with me, be sure and ask. But for those of you that are listening in, I would suggest that you Google these websites. One is Monica Matthews scholarships. Just Google that. You'll find her website. Google Jessica Velasco scholarships. Jessica Velasco scholarships. They each have websites and they help students find private scholarships. Google the scholarship system. The scholarship system. That's a woman who graduated and paid for her college on scholarships, and she charges for her services, but she helps you find scholarships. And lastly, perhaps the best of the bunch, I would suggest that you Google Imagine Scholarships. Imagine Scholarships. It's a company that's based in Texas. I think they charge $150 per year, but they have a very robust scholarship service. But not only that, on their website, they have the infrastructure for you to record and track all the scholarships to which you've applied, students have applied. Very powerful, and it's very cheap. $150 a year is nothing. So that was Imagine Scholarships. Then it says, private scholarships. So those are just a few examples on private scholarships. Now, I will tell you that private scholarships are mostly like 500, 1,000, 2,000, some are more, but most students who win private scholarships win a relatively modest scholarships. The other thing to keep in mind with private scholarships is that it is largely a numbers game. It requires a fair amount of time and effort. Many students don't feel that it's worth the time and the effort. It just doesn't pay off. So you have to decide how much time and effort you're willing to put into private scholarships, because the reality is most students really aren't that successful. Some are, but most are not. So you have to decide for yourself. Juan, anything else? I don't see any other questions.
Seems to be about it. There was another question I forgot to answer, and I said I was going to mention something here. College research. Miss L is a fantastic college and career specialist at Branham. She's been hosting workshops recently on a number of things. So Miss L, I don't know if you want to kind of add in about college research, because it is a humongous undertaking, it feels like, every year.
Yes, there's a lot of things going on when you have to build a college list, when you start researching for colleges. So I usually, I really think it will be a good idea if juniors can start looking into colleges now. Actually, in April, after we're back from spring break, I am going to host a workshop during tutorial that's just for how to build a college list. And we'll also do our last workshop on college essays. And I'm going to put a focus on UC essays, especially. So make sure if we have juniors here or junior parents here, parents of juniors here, remember to tell your kids to come to our workshop. I will show them how to build a school list and what tools they can find. These are all free tools. What tools they can find online, and how to use Naviance to find out, what colleges they should consider. Yeah. So definitely come to our workshop. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Al. And part of it, sometimes we do also in classroom, just general overview of college, secondary options and things like that. But please take advantage of a fantastic resource like Ms. Al that we have in room 45 in the College and Career Center. And I think that wraps it up. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. Stay tuned for.
Juan, let me make one last comment, if I might.
Yeah.
I would support or second what Juan and Chen are saying. I would strongly encourage your kids to spend time with Chen Lu and on this, not to procrastinate, not leave it till the last minute. And one last comment, there are many large, significant changes coming this fall in the college financial aid landscape. So I would encourage you to get on my mailing list. I'll keep you abreast of webinars I have coming up in about a month, for example. I've got a webinar coming up on the changes in the financial aid process that's starting this fall. Also be aware, for the last 10 years, we've gotten used to the FAFSA, the financial aid process opens typically on October the 1st. Junior parents, juniors to be upcoming seniors, you need to be aware, and you'll hear this again, the financial aid process, the FAFSA process, will be delayed from October 1st into sometime in December. That's the federal financial aid process. If your children are likely to apply to private colleges and universities, there's another process called the CSS profile. We didn't touch on it tonight. That will probably open on schedule, probably around October. So bottom line, stay tuned, pay attention. Don't go to sleep at the switch here, especially going into senior year. Pay attention to deadlines and priorities and what's coming up so you don't miss them. Okay. Thanks, Juan. And thanks everybody for joining us tonight.
Thank you, everybody. And the recording will be posted in the counseling website, hopefully tomorrow, if not sometime on Monday, under the Brandon Counseling website. So stay tuned for more upcoming webinars, similar with Steve, sometime in the fall, hopefully for juniors and seniors then. And thanks again. Have a good night.
Night, everybody.
Bye.